and we're going to stay with the theme of open. In the opening sessions here, we're just trying to set the stage and the context for some of the discussions that are coming up. And I think what's coming through is very strongly openness. This is what networks do. And so I'm extremely, let me make sure I've got my schedule right and I'm introducing the right people next. So Peter von Dyck, CEO of eZassi. Peter, how are you? So, follow that, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I think the transition here is there's been a lot of talk about how all the connectivity and Internet of Everything is changing all these big verticals, energy, transportation, et cetera. But what I want to talk about, and I think is as interesting, is how it's going to change the business model of innovation itself. And that's something that me and my organization focus on, and specifically that's embracing and empowering what's called open innovation. And so no surprise, enterprises, organizations, big and small, are trying to figure out how to leverage all this connectivity and Internet of Everything to accelerate R&D.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
Yeah. Well, let's start with open innovation. It's one of those kind of big ideas, big buzzwords in the innovation world. And of course, everybody loves open. I mean, it's like motherhood and apple pie. Who would not sign up to being open? But it's one of those woolly phrases that I feel you have to unpack, and you have to kind of say, well, what is it people are trying to achieve here? What are the real things that are working? So, I mean, when you use that phrase open innovation, what does it mean to you, and what are the things you see that people are doing that are actually working?
Well, without trying to overcomplicate it, it would generally mean that organizations and companies are trying to reach outside their enterprise as fast and as broadly as they can, and as globally as they can, to scout for new ideas and insights and technologies and partners. I think the days of relying on their R&D departments to populate most of their new product pipelines is kind of over. I think they're recognizing that they have many other constituents they can tap, from their employees to their supply chain, to consumers, to customers, to the rest of the world and expert networks. And I think most CEOs and boardrooms now recognize that they have to open up their enterprise and completely change their paradigm and culture in order to mine these ideas and insights much, much quicker. But here's the caveat. Where it gets difficult is, how do you protect the enterprise from intellectual property matter? And how do you remain proprietary in what you derive from the outside? So there's a real rub here in how to do it correctly, but the goal, nevertheless, is to tap as many minds in the world as you can to accelerate the velocity of R&D.
Right. And so what is actually working? We hear a lot about, kind of sharing as though it's, and by the way, that's another one of these words that as a journalist I really recoil against, because it creates this illusion of kind of goodwill and good feeling, and we all know that there are solid business motives behind all of this. And people talk a lot about sharing information, sharing ideas, but there are hard economic transactions behind all of this, and people are doing it with self-interest at stake. So, what kind of marketplaces for ideas do you think are working that you're seeing?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it started out with a lot of the open source stuff where there was almost charitable innovation, where people would just want to be part of things and contribute ideas. And that's fine for certain verticals, but for the majority of companies that want proprietary technologies, they want barriers to entry, they want patents around their technologies, they have long product development life cycles, they need to put a lot of money behind their products like pharma and aerospace, et cetera. That's not going to work. It's not about charity. It's really about connecting and finding partners and rapidly creating mutually beneficial relationships around what we call innovation commerce. What we really empower is i-commerce. And i-commerce is just like e-commerce was 10, 15 years ago. It benefits all parties, but there's a paranoia around it, and unless there's trust and a way to facilitate a real transaction, to your point, it's not going to happen. So to really power innovation commerce or i-commerce, these companies are now creating online mechanisms to connect with solvers and with ideation folks and bring in ideas securely, where both parties can align and disclose safely to protect each party's freedom to operate. Because obviously most of these connections are not going to pan out into partners or new products. Some of them will. And no company can risk holding back from doing that kind of mining, but you do have to create, at the end of the day, a synergistic transaction.
I mean, what incentivizes companies to, to open the kimono and kind of give up their valuable information? And I had a meeting with a CEO of a very big US company that unfortunately I can't name, but in a consumer products area recently. And this guy was proposing, and he's been going around to other companies suggesting this idea that let's kind of share our non-essential data, more of our non-essential data. At the moment we're all buying information from all these third-party vendors, and some of it's valuable, some of it's not, and we're all stores of our own data. And actually, there'd be a huge benefit to us kind of being a little more open and sharing things. And yet, as soon as you try and float those kinds of ideas in any industry, it creates this immediate feeling of, well, what am I giving up and what am I getting in return? And so you talk about trust. I mean, there's a huge kind of issue about incentives here. How do you get over that?
Well, there's various incentives. So I think when companies do use their own intellectual properties as a means to lure collaboration, they do use their non-essential ones primarily, because they know those can be repurposed by creative minds and reapplied into potentially new scenarios where there's new value. But they're not going to give up their core IP in this case, nor reveal their true strategic direction. So it's just a means to create and foster collaboration. But open innovation doesn't require companies to do that. Sometimes they just have to create an online presence that says, we're open for business, we're open for e-commerce. We'd like you to come in and submit ideas to us about what you think may benefit our company, whatever that may be. Sometimes it involves them putting something out there to out-license or to use or to foster this, but they don't need to do it.
No. I really like the idea of some of these global competitions that are being run, idea competitions.
Challenges.
Yeah, challenges that we see more and more of as a way to both tap ideas, but also to build networks of suppliers or suppliers of ideas in future. And I know companies like GE are using these kinds of models. Do you know Kaggle is one of the companies that runs these kinds of competitions? You pose a challenge, you invite everybody to submit, and then you find people who in future you can build contacts with, and so build a network. The only problem with this is that it does rely on a small percentage of winners, as it were, and a lot of people trying to join a network and make a living. How do you think it'll kind of settle down and stabilize in the long run?
Well, issuing challenges, we do that as well as eZassi for our clients. And what the goal there is to take a specific problem set that you may have and obviously publish it to solicit potential ideas and solutions. But the one way that you address the legal concerns, of course, of who owns the intellectual property that may come from this is by offering a prize or remuneration. So obviously what helps open innovation get around some of the illegal roadblocks is offering a prize or money and also making it very clear how the program will work. That if you submit an idea to us under this paradigm, we own those ideas, even if we choose not to move forward with them, etc. So challenges are one of the easier ways to get going with open innovation, and a great way to say we're open for business and we would like to collaborate. But again, there's many other ways, and they don't always require you to go public with a challenge, because many companies don't want to do that, because then they're revealing their strategic corporate direction to their competition. So they don't always want to issue a challenge. Sometimes they want to work in a stealth mode, and that's why we help them do that also in a stealth mode, where they can solicit new ideas and technologies, but do it without declaring it to the world.
Right. So what are you talked a little bit about some of the legal kind of issues this brings up. What are the real legal kind of pitfalls here that companies need to think about?
Well, they're huge. I mean, again, with e-commerce, I think we were all scared of putting in our credit card numbers and our social security numbers and losing our dollars and cents in stocks and things like that. With innovation commerce, you could be losing, million-dollar, multi-million-dollar ideas. You could have something submarine, a product you've been working on for 5 to 10 years. You can imagine how disastrous that would be in a pharmaceutical environment where they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year and they get submarined. So the real legal roadblock is controlling disclosure. If it's not properly controlled and IP is just allowed to come into the enterprise without a structure to it, these companies are now permeable to IP coming in And then, of course, that can lead to misappropriation, litigation, a whole myriad of very expensive, problematic legal issues.
So you mean they're using protected IP without realizing, so people are submitting protected...
Potentially protected.
Yeah.
Keep in mind the patent office, even if an idea comes in, unpatented, very young, immature idea comes in, if the owners of this wish to pursue patents in the future and it's been publicly disclosed, the patent office will not allow it. The patent office does not like sharing open public disclosure. Okay? And this is for the same for patent offices around the world. They're harmonious in this approach. That's why we all sign CDAs. That's why we're all very cloaked and quiet when we talk about ideas. So except for the charitable innovators, e-commerce must be powered by trusted mechanisms to control stage disclosure and actually make sure both parties' freedom to operate is maintained and facilitate transactions.
Well, we're not going to solve the patent system here today. But clearly, as you say, it was designed for an altogether different economy. Mm-hmm. How far, though, has something like the America Invents Act gone to make some of these things work better? I mean, it's changed, for instance, the way that patents are, or when ideas are recognized as patentable.
Well, I think two things have changed, good and bad. I think on the difficult side now in America with this change of first to file versus first to invent, we've lost the innovator has lost the protection of time. When they innovated now doesn't really matter. It's who rushed to the PTO offices first and filed this officially. And of course, larger companies are in a better position to do that economically. They have big legal teams. So what's happening, there's a bit more paranoia and slight distrust now and fear between the collaborators and the outside world and disclosing to companies. So therefore, the dependency on a trusted portal or software system like we build to make sure that's trusted and secure has gone up. But on the flip side, innovators now, because the life cycles now are so quick on new products, they need to partner with larger companies and companies faster and financial partners in order to move these things into the product universe much quicker because the life cycles are much shorter. So they really can't be an island and do it on their own anymore. They need to connect, collaborate, partner. So both sides need each other. It's just something that needs to be made safer.
Yeah. Do we have any questions, by the way? We should have some microphones out if anybody has any thoughts on the patent system. So, I mean, with this kind of first to file, I don't know whether you have much experience of Europe and other countries, as you say, have a different system. Do you think it's had that it has actually had a chilling effect on how ideas are developed and shared in other economies versus the US? I mean, because the patent system is one of those very complex structures of incentives that you tweak one item and you can't quite tell what's going to come out of it.
True.
And we all wrote off the America Invents Act as fiddling on the side without dealing with the real issues that need to be dealt with. And yet, this to me feels like potentially a huge thing.
It is a huge thing here because we have been a culture of innovation and favoring the innovator and the small company and the small enterprise and the two guys in the garage. And so it's an impact there. There's no doubt about it. But as usual, the market will adjust. The rest of the world has been doing it for a long time. So now it's harmonious around the world. We will adjust. And I think this whole digital paradigm and Internet of Everything will help the market adjust by structuring disclosure and making it safe for both parties to connect and share and solve together.
Yeah. All right, well, unless there are any last questions before we move on, I'm going to call it a day there. Good, thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you very much.